Welcome to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, where we discuss all things political, bringing you the top stories, locally, nationally, and from around the world. I'm Ruben Abati, and This Day Live begins now. Welcome to today's panelists, Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos. Now let's start with the big topic of the day. Today is International Women's Day. The United Nations first celebrated International Women's Day in 1975. By 1977, the United Nations and its member states proclaimed 8th March 8th, that's today, that will be an official day for women's rights and world peace. The Each for Equal, hashtag Each for Equal campaign has become a symbol of the movement, which extends far beyond March 8th, with activities running all year long. The idea is to reinforce and galvanize collective action, events and talks that urge us all to share responsibility and play our part and respect the rights of women. Well, Yemi, I will start with you to comment on this. This is International Women's Day. I do not mean anything negative by asking you to comment on it first.
And I don't take anything negative in it. Thank you. I think there's often a pushback that why the focus on women, or there's a focus on women to the detriment of speaking about men. But as I think, who was that? I'm trying to remember the quote. Anyway, Chairman Mao, I believe, that said, women hold up half the sky. And I think just reinforcing that, yes, both sexes are important, but women have struggled significantly in society for cultural issues, who see women in different cultures as less than half of a human being, from the suffrage rights to vote to equal pay for women. So there's a lot to sexual violence against women, to women being used as weapons of war, or weapons in a war, so to speak. It goes without saying that the importance of women cannot be overemphasized. And the awareness that needs to be raised to give women equal rights in society is also extremely important. And particularly the theme for this year, Each for Equal, just re-emphasizing that women deserve equal rights. And yeah, I mean, this is what, 45 odd years since it was first started, and it is, some issues are still the same, but we've made some progress in some areas. So yeah, happy International Women's Day.
Yeah, but also, I think, given our own peculiar circumstances in Nigeria, I think we have a duty to say also that women's rights continue to be abused in Nigeria. Only recently, a woman in Cross River State, Justice Akon Ikpeme, was denied the position of the acting chief judge of Cross River State, basically on the grounds that they claim that she's not from Cross River. Despite the fact that she's married to a Cross River man and she has children from Cross River. So women in Nigeria, they continue to be discriminated against. Indeed. So on a day like this, it's not even just about appointments, it's also about opportunities for women.
Yeah, indeed.
Citizenship rights, property rights, yeah. And Nigeria has not made enough effort to look at these key areas. And I think that on a day like this, Nigerian women can speak up and say, look, we are citizens. Yes. Women are mothers, they are citizens. The girl child is also a citizen. Yeah. But Prof, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you see, right from the time of a Beijing conference, when women, especially leading women in global politics, have raised the issue of the need to ensure the protection of women's rights generally. I do not think that much has been done at the level of Nigeria, except under military president Badamasi Babangida, when the wife spearheaded, the struggle. To that extent, and I will say thereafter, emphasis has not always been placed on the movement for the protection of women's rights in Nigeria. To an extent, we may want to hold the executive director of enough responsible, because as a woman, I do not think that enough has been done in terms of how to advance the protection of women's rights. You did raise the issue of, the example you raised. I think that it's not stricto sensu discrimination against women. You see, in some states, in Nigeria, the principle of federal character does not distinguish between male or female, but it places emphasis on where you come from. Then there are some states which also believe that certain positions should be reserved for their, indigents. So in this case, if somebody who is married to an outsider is even at the level of a federal government policy, if you are a diplomat, for instance, and you choose to marry a non-Nigerian, then you can know quite well that, look, there will be limitations to the extent and how far you will go.
The woman will be declared a security risk.
Yes, precisely.
As Justice Ikpeme was
Precisely.
declared a security risk in our own country, in Cross River State.
So, you see, these are the challenges that we need to address.
But they're constantly being addressed. And I think, to your point, Prof, and then maybe Dr. Abati's point, that International Women's Day provides one day that the voices can be amplified. But it's a constant conversation. Women, as you said, it's 25 years post-Beijing this year. There was supposed to be a convening in New York that was unfortunately cancelled because of coronavirus. But I think at different forums, through different platforms, the issues are constantly being addressed, constantly being advocated for, from everything from the Child's Right Act to the Violence Against Persons Act, to even get legislature to protect women. So the conversation continues, but today just provides a day where everybody, in a sense, is talking about it, even though you have,
I think
throughout the year, organizations speak about it.
The modalities for celebrating International Women's Day, we really need to look at them, Cindy. You see, I think that this day is supposed to serve as a means of really advancing, all right, the cause of the women.
Why don't you think it does?
No, you see, for instance, public enlightenment, debate.
Let me have Professor Ariola's thoughts, who is also a husband, a father, and who is an interested party.
The point remains that
do you have daughters?
Rwanda, I have boys for now. I think girls will come. There is no doubt. I'm still ready.
Prof,
of course now.
Madam is listening to you. You are saying the boys will come.
I said girls will come.
You talk yourself into trouble.
So what I'm trying to say is that, you see, Rwanda remains best practice in this issue. And it's Africa. And it's so interesting that Paul Kagame has proved to be a man who can really reconcile these issues of women's rights and men's rights also, because he is leading Rwanda and is able to make women very, very relevant in his politics and organization. But what I'm worried sometimes when they talk about women's rights, I have asked my colleagues in Unilag, for example, is there any parity in our pay salary? And they have told me none. I don't understand. But when you go to the West, they say there is no parity in salary for men and women. I get disturbed because I don't see it in Africa. So somehow we have moved ahead of them. I don't know. You see, the problem is that within the civilization of the Asians, there is a problem, agree. And this is where people should really be concerned about. Recently, they said women are allowed now to drive in Saudi Arabia, which is progress also. Before it wasn't there. So I would say Africa is making good moves to get to where women will really feel very, very comfortable in parity terms, whether work, salary, whatever you want it to be.
The issue of women driving or not driving, I do not think it's a question of inferiority of women. It's not a question of inferiority. That's why they're not driving.
That's why they were banned from.
They were banned from doing that.
But
by the men, of course, very clear.
What we know, Prof,
it is meant
is that
to protect their integrity. To say, look,
there's still structural discrimination against women. There's workplace discrimination against women. There's discrimination against the girl child, not just in Nigeria, but across the whole of Africa. And on a day like this, we have an opportunity to look at those issues again, to see how we can, in gender relations, establish equity, fairness, justice. Women constituting about 50%, by the way, of the Nigerian population. And they do not deserve to be discriminated against. We'll take a short break now. When we return, the conversation will continue. It's still International Women's Day, March 8, 2020. Welcome back to This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in this studio, I have Professor Bola Akintenrewa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. And Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French Studies and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Now, let's take another topic. We've been talking about International Women's Day. But earlier in the week in Nigeria, the Nigerian Senate approved $22.7 billion external loan request that was sent to by President Muhammadu Buhari. This was the outcome of a closed-door session of the upper chamber, during which the report of the Senator Clifford Odia-led Committee on Local and Foreign Loans, which considered the 2016-2018 federal government external borrowing rolling plan, was presented to the senators. The rolling plan contained a $20.7 billion loan request to fund some specific ongoing projects across the country and was considered and approved at the executive session of the Senate. According to reports, the session was with a bit of a rancor and was also a bit heated. Now, this loan proposal by the president had been very controversial since November 2019, when it was brought up. Many Nigerians thought that, look, this will amount to just selling off Nigeria or the future of Nigerian children. But at the end of the day, the presidency has been able to have its way. It was originally a $29.9 request, but the 8th Assembly rejected wholesale, but then changed its mind later on and approved about $6 billion. So at the end of the day, this 9th National Assembly has now approved $22.7 billion.
Plus 6.
Plus what?
I said plus 6.
Plus 6, yes, to make the original amount. But still, many Nigerians think this does not make sense, even if the whole idea is to do infrastructure. The Mambila Hydro Project, the Coastal Railway Line, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the
Lagos Canal,
digitalization of
NTA,
of the NTA, that's the Nigerian Television Authority, and other issues relating to roads, water, healthcare in Kaduna State, in the FCT, in Kogi State, and some other states of the Federation. Now, Nigerians say, well, we seem to have a problem on our hands because we are borrowing to survive. And they say, he who goes a borrowing, goes a sorrowing. But the government says, well, the Department of the Debt Management Office has a creative way of encouraging this. The Ministry of Finance says, well, our debt to GDP ratio is still manageable. But what do you think? lady and gentlemen. I'll start with you, Professor Ariole.
Well, the problem we have in Nigeria seriously is a lack of planning and lack of making effective use of our resources and manpower in getting more revenue. You know, the finance minister say our problem is revenue problem. And I still wonder, if revenue is, our problem is revenue problem, why not, you know, garner the human resources and materials that are required to get this revenue to be at an optimum point? That's very important, because Nigeria with about 200 million people, and as the minister said, our credit, our loan ratio to GDP is still below what the World Bank expects us to have, which means still room for us to borrow. But the problem is, this borrowing, are they attached to real, you know, revenue generating
I just listed some of the projects.
Yeah, but we have seen them. When you say...
You said revenue generating.
No, we use infrastructure to generate revenue. But I'm worried, yes.
Yeah, but
for example, NTA digitalization, my problem is that the component of what you are going to use to digitalize NPA is not going to be locally sourced. It's going to be outwardly sourced, either by using foreign exchange, which we are still battling to shore up and get to somewhere. Our reserves are already down. And you see, paying our debt, like somebody said, we use about 40% of our revenue to pay to service debt. And that makes Nigeria getting more to poverty stage. So there is a need to itemize what can make us have money for now before we start talking about borrowing more. You see, one of the reasons why we are complaining about not joining ECO, which would have been better for Nigeria, is that we are still not up to the 14% GDP debt ratio expected of us, so as to join. So,
but Prof, if I may play the devil's advocate, this same government has introduced the Finance Act 2020, which is supposed to raise VAT and create more revenue. All right? They've also done the Deep Offshore Basin Act, which is supposed to bring us more money. And the CBN has introduced a number of monetary policies. I mean, don't we have confidence in that?
Yeah, but
at the end of the day, this will balance
still with weak infrastructure. You are asking people who are managing and fighting to get electricity to generate their own revenue that will now be subjected to taxation to still pay more. It's like, you know, discouraging the people.
I mean, what do you think?
It's like discouraging them.
I mean, I think part of the challenge with the context of conversations like this is the sort of lack of trust that people have in this administration. This is its second term. So yes, you want to borrow, but not so, I don't know, maybe 20 odd years under the Obasanjo administration, 15 odd years under the Obasanjo administration, where we got a loan, what's that word now? Loan wiped off.
Debt relief.
Thank you very much. Debt relief and all of that. And it seems that we're going to end up not just at that level of debt, but if not higher. And it's not that you see there's a commensurate tightening of government expenditure. So yes, we're borrowing money for infrastructure. You can see there's something to be said for that. You can see in the long term, it's revenue, it will begin to generate revenue because there's ease of access for goods, blah, 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 blah. But you have a government where we're spending, about 40% of our profile now servicing debt. About 70+% of our annual budget every year is on recurrent cost. And we've done nothing. If you take even just our government structure in streamlining it, it's one of the things President Buhari said he would do when he came in, that government is too big and that we need to plug the holes and do this and do that. Oransoye report hasn't been implemented. Our civil service is, everybody recognizes that our civil service is bloated. You only need to have a transaction with government to realize that people are not doing anything. Because you walk into your typical government office, people are either gisting or they're conducting business on the side because they are not engaged. So if we're spending money in that regard, yet we want to borrow, that's where the lack of trust comes in, because people don't trust that the government will spend the money where it is most needed. And especially if we even look at, we're doing all these things, but our education system, for me, even if you said you wanted to tackle education, because you need a crop of educated citizens to drive the Nigeria of the future, because you're putting the Nigeria of the future in debt. But that's not even a conversation. We're talking about roads. Needed, but brain
roads,
capacity.
railways, healthcare,
Yeah.
water.
Still dependent on foreign
no, but even still dependent
maintenance
on
process.
human beings that need to understand where the future is.
Exactly,
and
okay.
can foresee a vision for the future. Let me summarize it this way. We're borrowing $30 billion without an underlying vision casted for this is the Nigeria.
27.
To be precise.
27.
Without the underlying
Or 22.7.
plus the 6 plus the 6 from last year. But without an underlying vision of the Nigeria for the future that this debt will drive.
No, there's another line vision.
What's the vision? Please?
Because
What's
the
that?
first time it was rejected by the Saraki-led National Assembly. The excuse by that 8th Assembly was that the president did not provide the details. When he now approached the 9th Assembly, he provided the
Dr.
details.
Abati, details and vision are two different things. Telling me you want to spend 13 billion on a road, a rail network, coastal rail line, it's not a vision for a Nigeria I want to see that would drive me to trust that where you're taking me works for me. It's not in the details. It's in the
But it
casting
will
the
work
vision.
for us if the Mambila Hydro works, if the coastal
but
railway
I
works,
disagree with you, though.
if the
That's not what I'm
Lagos-Ibadan
saying.
Expressway works.
So
That's not what I'm
basically,
saying.
power would have been the best thing to focus on now.
No, that's not what I'm
So that people can
Professor
generate
Akintayo,
money.
what's your take on this
Let
subject?
me re-explain Yemi's point.
Thank you.
This way.
Thank you.
You see,
That's what gets me.
it reminds me of what was called Senatus Consultum during the Roman Empire, ancient times. It's a decree which was supposed to be advisory, but ended up being, a law that was made.
That prevailed.
Yeah, that prevailed. The point being made by Yemi is this. It is not sufficient to talk about I will construct this, I will build that. The issue now is that when she's talking about trust, please, the approval itself was given in an environment of mistrust. Please, why do you talk about a rancorous meeting? What makes it rancorous? Was it not because of the disagreement there? They have to leave the plenary, retreat into a closed-door meeting, decided now that, okay, we'll go along party line. And the minority leader, even the majority leader, what is it that they are, why are they agreed on this case, majority and the minority leader? They are now saying that, look, the point you even raised, why the Saraki-led East Senate did not approve. I do not share your view when you say now they have provided the details. Which details have they provided? If they have provided details, the minority leader and the majority leader are now asking that, okay, let us discuss these issues item by item, issue by issue. Let us understand what the problem is. They are saying that, look, this approval itself, this budget, this loan is lopsided. They gave instances. But the president of the Senate insists that, okay, look, it will not go that way.
Well, Prof,
They requested for 1
we need
week.
to take a short commercial break, but the key issue by the minority leader is that the details favor APC states rather than PDP states. And my own concern is, were they not part of the Committee on Public Debts? We'll take a short break, and then when we return, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Professor Bola Akintayo, Director General, Polytech Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Now, Prof. Akintayo, you were commenting on the $22.7 billion approved loan for the Nigerian government. But I would like you to continue, but let us also note that about 60% of that loan is going to come from the Chinese Exim Bank, right? From the China Exim Bank, about 60% of it. Now that we have coronavirus, what is the what is the expectation? What is the assurance that we'll even be able to get that money? That money will still come also from part of it. The remaining 40% will come from the Islamic Development Bank, will come from banks in France, in Germany, and some other places. So is Nigeria chasing the shadow in a real sense?
The Chinese are on record to live as planned. The issue of COVID-19 may be a challenge, but that cannot prevent the Beijing authorities from meeting their obligations in the spirit of sanctity of agreements. You see, I was trying to draw attention to what we call the French magouille. Magouille is
Scandal.
Yes, you know, it's fraud, you know. And then I was to draw attention also to the question of immunity for the principal officers in the House of Representatives. In other words, I'm trying to split, to expound on the issue of mistrust that Yemi did raise here. That is the issue. The money we are going to take as loan is not the issue. Its application is not. But you see the perception.
No, but accountability is important.
Yeah,
Very
precisely.
important.
Precisely. And that's the point to which we really need to draw attention, that Yemi was quite right. You see, left to me as an individual, it is very selfish, very dishonest, very unpatriotic to even want to take any loan at this material time, simply because we do not have the capacity to repay. As at 2015, when President Muhammadu Buhari acceded to power, the debt profile, foreign debt profile, was 12.6 billion. Obasanjo had reduced this drastically thanks to debt relief. It was 12.6 billion. As at November 2019, this has increased to 26.4. Now, rather than reducing, it is increasing. And in terms of percentage, debt service repayment, how can you now take as much as 70% of the money earmarked for capital projects to service? Now you now want
deficit budget.
Now you now want to take loan again. I'm not against infrastructural development, but who is going to bear the brunt, all right, for the effect, for the impact? This is where dishonesty of purpose comes in. And when we do not have the capacity, I now look at the attitudinal disposition of the Senate President, Lawan, who says that, okay, look, he doesn't want any second reading. Let's have it holistically. Vote for this. You do not want the details reviewed, discussed. Now, that is very dishonest in itself. So when you now bring the factor of immunity, I now look at it, okay, these are senators in the future, then representatives as are today, seeking immunity to protect them, all right, against this type of...
Prof, let's wrap this up by just noting and restating that Ahmed Lawan, as Senate President, made it very clear after taking out of office that whatever is brought by the executive, his Senate, led by him,
We'll approve it.
we approve.
It's a good conclusion of my position.
Yeah, because
he
he says whatever the president brings is in the best interest of Nigeria. So, as it were,
Most
it will look
unfortunate.
like we have a rubber stamp Senate of the National Assembly of Nigeria.
Which is
But
not good.
Let's take another topic. Still in Nigeria, the Minister of Finance, Zainab Ahmed, noted recently that the federal government may review the approved 2020 budget over the economic impact of coronavirus. The 2020 budget of Nigeria is about 10.59 trillion naira, and it was based on crude oil benchmark of $57 per barrel, with a production capacity of 2.1 million barrels per day. But the virus, which has spread through 80 countries, has negatively affected the price of crude oil, Nigeria's major source of revenue. Speaking with journalists at the end of the Federal Executive Council meeting last Wednesday, the minister said that there are concerns over the spread of the disease, considering its economic impact. She said crude oil production is now between 2 million and 2.1 million barrels per day, which is below the benchmark on which the budget was prepared. Ahmed said a review will be done to determine if a budget adjustment will be enforced. Well, my own opinion is that inevitably the budget has to be reviewed because all the fundamentals are now askew. 2.1 million barrels per day, that is not certain. Now that OPEC minus Russia, has decided that there will be a further cut of 1 million barrels per day, even if all the members of OPEC Plus may not take the same, reduction figure. And then again, you have the spot price of crude oil, far below $52 per barrel. So what do? Nigeria needs money. We need revenue to be able to fund the budget. Is there hope? Or are we really looking at a situation where the foreign reserves will further deplete, where the excess crude account will further go down, and Nigeria will have no option but to devalue the Naira. And if the Naira is devalued, all of us will be in trouble. Clearly. Get me?
I mean, I think given on that point, given the amount of money that the central bank has spent over the last 5 odd years to protect the Naira, I'm sure they will do everything they can to protect it.
Okay. With some means, they'll print money.
Well.
The inflation will go up.
Or borrow as a case. But I think just at this point, in terms of a holistic conversation, which is the point I'm making about a vision, it's at this time that you're rubber stamping a loan without having a conversation around how your fundamentals of your 2020 budget has been shifted by an ongoing pandemic. If both were actually discussed hand in hand, or even the loan request stepped down, for this sort of overview of where we are as a country, where our financials, and then the loan conversation is plugged into that, given our current state, then it's a different conversation that we can have around people who, in a sense, are acting in the best interest of Nigeria. And I think for me, that just reinforces my concern around why we're borrowing and going our sorrowing, as the case may be.
I don't think the problem is that of reviewing the budget.
Well, you can review the budget anyway.
Precisely.
Procedurally.
Look, you can do all that, but I think we really need to address what the problem is. If, for instance, we want to review the strategies, all right, I will agree with you. What is involved? We have about 70% of debt service. Now, reduce debt service to about 20%. Negotiate with them. All right? The intended revenue that you really want to acquire and then pay, made available to the creditors, you can look at it from that angle. Now, the minister made it clear that we are having an increase in oil production from 2 million barrels per day to about 2.1. That, look, we are really going to have an increase in revenue from that perspective. You too,
no,
Dr.
2.1 was the benchmark.
Now, that was,
with this proposed OPEC cut, we'll be down to about 1 million barrels.
Nigeria has been allowed to...
Now, we violated the OPEC quota. Okay?
Well,
so if we abide by OPEC quota, we'll be in trouble in terms of revenue.
Yes, you see, the point I'm making is a little bit different. I am saying that we need to respond to challenges as they arise, not on the basis of going back to budget itself. It's an estimate. It's an estimate.
No, but it's law.
Well, it's law, but it has never performed
once
50%
it
since
is
this
passed,
government came
it
to
is
power.
law.
No.
But since this government came to power, we have never achieved 50%
Precisely.
budget performance.
No, but this same government returned to the December to January cycle. They achieved that. We must give them.
But performance-wise, we are talking about performance. How much money was? You have always budgeted something, but how much money have been released? How much money have been released
but
for?
I think the point about that, though, is just to show how much more of a gap we will then have. So if you've always budgeted 10, and you've only released 6, now that you don't even have 10, that you actually now have 4, then there's a problem.
So you are still not going to release what you have budgeted?
Exactly.
But at least let's know what.
So it's just making noise about a gap when there is nothing about gap. What happened to excess crude account reserve? They say it's already depleted. On what ground? This is the reason why excess crude account was kept.
No, the excess crude account, as we sit here, has been practically emptied.
That's what I'm saying. It was not supposed to be.
So we don't have
empty.
any protection against exogenous shocks. And that's why Nigerians have to put on their thinking caps, and the Economic Advisory Council has to be more proactive. And we need to know what they are doing. But we'll take a short break now here on ThisDayLive, this Sunday talk show. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to ThisDayLive, the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. Still with me in the studio, I have Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. Professor Bola Akintenwa, Director General, Bolitag Center for International Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, and Professor Victor Ariole, Professor of French and Francophone Studies at the University of Lagos, Nigeria. Well, we've been having very interesting conversation, but let's take a look at another subject, also from Nigeria. It will be recalled that on Wednesday, March 4, 2020, Justice Danlami Senchi of the Federal High Court, Abuja, suspended the national chairman of the All Progressives Congress, APC, Adams Oshiomhole, asking him to stop parading himself as the chairman of the party. The judge, who based his judgment, is ruling on the November 2, 2019 resolution of the Esako West Local Government Area Ward 10 of Edo State, where Oshiomhole comes from, ruled that he could not continue to hold the position of the APC national chairman after his ward, Esako 10, had suspended him. Oshiomhole's suspension thereafter became controversial as another court of equal, coordinate jurisdiction, the Federal High Court in Kano, voided his suspension within 24 hours. The embattled chairman's suspension came amidst a power tussle between him and his successor, the Edo State Governor, Godwin Obaseki. The tussle already has created factions within the ruling party in the state and continues to threaten the party's unity at the national level. Well, the latest information that we have is that the National Executive Council of the party, which has the powers under the party constitution to discipline members and to take all decisions, except decisions taken at the National Convention, has now decided that there will be a meeting of that National Executive Council, I think on March 17. And the implication, the suggestion, the imputation is that at that meeting, Adams Oshiomhole may be asked to step aside as the chairman of the party. But clearly, what is in the public domain is that the All Progressives Congress, the ruling party in Nigeria, is embattled, and it faces the threat of implosion. And its chairman, Adams Oshiomhole, is in the eye of the storm. What do you think? Let me start with you, Professor Ariole.
Well, politics. You know, Edo State has been stormy since the current governor came in, and it's very clear that if internally you as the chairman of the party cannot solve the problem from where you came from, there is need to really reconsider your situation as the topmost person in the party in terms of chairmanship, not the president anyway, because they see president as the leader. But what's happening currently is that the president has never said anything, and people are worried. It is high time the president came out and
This same president or another one?
Yeah, the president. I'm talking of the president, Buhari. Yes, I'm not
expecting him to come out.
Yes, I expect him to say something. Yes, I expect him to say something so that he could, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you and President Buhari. One day I will settle your quarrel.
Yes,
he ran that he wanted to serve the people of Nigeria. He is sleeping.
Yeah,
but Professor Ariole here is waiting for him to come.
Yeah, but because if he's not commenting, the problem will keep on going on.
But why I'm asking that is because he has shown no track record of commenting on anything.
Yeah, but this one concerns him because that's the party upon which he stands as the president of Nigeria, APC.
Every other thing he does.
And the chairman is about to be removed, so he has to say something.
You think it concerns him?
No, but why wouldn't it concern him?
No, Professor Ariole,
he's taking part.
Just to state the facts. Comrade Adams Oshiomhole met with the president. Shortly after, he had a press conference. He did not disclose the content of their conversation. But shortly after that, we were told that a meeting of the National Executive Council has now been summoned. Now, maybe perhaps the president has a hand in that. And when the National Executive Council meets, we will get to know what the outcome of that meeting is.
But the judgment still...
So, but you are right to say the president as leader of the party has a role to play in the matter. But what's your grouse with President Buhari?
I'm just saying that he's shown nothing. There's no track record to show that President Buhari speaks on issues that affect both his internal party, his internally within his administration, and as it affects Nigerians. So I think for me, I'm no longer surprised that things that he should speak to that he doesn't speak to. But on that, for me, what I find very interesting in Mr. Oshiomhole's case is that the same way the judiciary is being used to procure election judgments. And I use
procure, my words. The integrity of the judiciary.
No, they've impugned it themselves. I don't have to help them with it. Because if courts of coordinate jurisdiction can issue completely separate judgments. And it's not just
as appellate courts over each other.
Or an appellate in an election tribunal, the appeal court, which is the final level for State House of Assembly or National Assembly elections, has given a judgment. But then a high court in Abuja will suddenly decide they have a separate judgment. So when the judiciary itself is making a mockery of the institution, I'm actually glad that we now are seeing it not just for elections, but in cases like Mr. Oshiomhole, where a court in Abuja gave one judgment and within 24 hours, another court has given a different judgment. And you wonder for what? And the speed, I think that's the point I wanted to point. The speed in which these judgments come out is quite amazing. Quite amazing.
Well, Prof?
Some lawyers have told us that when two equities meet,
everybody is a lawyer now in Nigeria.
No, we only read. We only read
from the bathroom to the living room. Everybody has become a lawyer in Nigeria.
When two equities meet, the law prevails. But when two laws meet, the law that came
justice
first
will prevail.
The first one shall prevail.
Okay.
Now, when we look at this from the perspective of municipal law, it's now saying that the principle of precedence should apply, since they are now talking about the first ruling. But when we move the argument to the level of international law, there is the principle of lex posteriori deroga priori. That is, when you have a law on the basis of a precedent now, anterior, all right, the old law on one issue, and you now have another law on the same issue thereafter, it says that, look, deroga priori derogates, all right, as a matter of priority, the former one, which means that it is the latest law
that
matters. So I now find it a little bit difficult to say what's happening.
You are talking about the conflict of laws.
Conflict of laws.
Exactly.
So in this case, in terms of international law now, we should go along in the thinking of the international jurists, the law in Kano, the latest one.
Is the current,
That's the current one. So now,
But it
for
doesn't
me,
apply in this case.
Precisely, it doesn't. But you see, we really need to address what the issue is. What really is at stake? The object of litigation, like this acting secretary of the APC in the north, while he went to court, he's saying that it is not possible, it is not acceptable for Oshiomhole to be the chairman and then preside over allegations brought against him.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the issue. That he's not saying that you are right, you are wrong. But if you are the chairman, from your base, from your ward, you have allegations here and there. Why should you now dismiss, for instance, allegations against you? They should be looked into. And I think that it is this perspective that we really need to handle this particular matter.
Prof, what is very clear to all of us is that the APC, the ruling party in Nigeria, is embattled, and that it faces the threat of implosion. And that all the stakeholders within that political party will need to do whatever they need to do to protect the party, to ensure internal democracy, to carry people along, to ensure that it's not a party of big men, but a party with purpose and direction, and a party that is committed to serving the Nigerian people. And we can say the same for all other political parties, including the main opposition party, the People's Democratic Party. The political party system is meant to serve the people. Here in Nigeria, the political party system doesn't serve the people. It serves the interest
because the
of
party
big men.
is yet to become systemic.
Well, you've been watching ThisDayLive. We've got to go now. The Sunday Talk Show here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now. And thank you very much for watching. We'll see you next Sunday. Thank you.